Hi everyone and welcome to my May Plan With Me video. If this is your first time here, hi, my name is Thea and I make videos mainly about bullet journaling. Without further ado, let's start setting up my May cover page. I actually had a different idea for my theme at first, as I was going to do a spring version of my December theme, but I felt like it would have been a bit too similar after all. I suddenly had this idea that I could draw Polaroid pictures of small moments in everyday life which make me happy. First thing that came to my mind was morning and breakfast, which by the way is the most important meal of the day in my opinion, and I sketched this illustration in my sketchbook. I left out the porridge though because that one is more difficult to draw, and drew a little alarm clock, vase full of tulips and a teacup instead. This theme isn't the most cohesive one because I doodled different doodles in every spread, but I really enjoyed making it after drawing just daffodils in April. By the way, all the supplies that I used in this video are listed in the description box as always, so check that out if you are wondering which pens I used, for example. I mainly used Pigma 01 fineliner for outlining the doodles, as I didn't want to make the lines too thick. When I sketched the first version of this illustration in my sketchbook, I made it a lot smaller, so I was a little nervous how it would end up looking in this cover page, as bigger illustrations can be more tricky to color in with water-based markers. But luckily this cover page turned out okay and I really like it. After the three elements were ready, I drew a tablecloth and I tried to make it look like lace. My mom has crocheted a few tablecloths for me and I used those as my inspiration for the patterns in the edges. To imitate the lace texture, I drew the pattern with a small dots instead of drawing a straight line. Then I moved on to the lettering and I used a Tombow fudenosuke hard tip pen for that as always. As the word May is really short, I actually didn't speed up this clip, and as you can see, lettering takes a bit of time. I think my biggest tip when it comes to drawing or writing is to be patient and take your time, as the lines usually look a bit neater when you don't rush with it. Anyway, now that the line work is done, we are moving on to the coloring process. I love pink, so obviously I had to make the tulips pink as well. After the first layer of color, I went over some of the areas to add a bit of a shadow. I always like to add shadows to my illustrations for two reasons. They make the doodles look more three-dimensional, and it's also a good way to hide the streaks that water-based markers often leave behind. Using water-based markers for coloring has taken a bit of practice, as I used to use colored pencils in my bullet journal, and it's a lot easier to create a smooth surface with those. The reason why I like to use markers nowadays is that they are more opaque and the coloring process is a lot quicker. I also like the fact that you don't have to use a sharpener with them, which means less mess. My colored pencils are also very cheap and not very opaque, so that's also why I don't like to use them anymore, because I had to press really hard with them to get a more vibrant look. The markers I used for the coloring are mainly Tombow dual brush pens, which you could also use for lettering. Crayola super tips are also great, but they don't have as many light neutral shades, which I like to use these days. I actually just ordered the Crayola Colors of the World markers and I can't wait for them to arrive, as they have the perfect neutral shade. Anyway, for the wall I decided to add this light pink grid pattern. I think this made the background more interesting without taking the attention away from the main elements, which are the items on the table. Then I colored in the metallic parts of the clock with a gold jelly roll, which added a nice shine to the spread. Finally, it was time to add the highlights on the left side of each item, as the shadows are on the right side. The white gel pen I use is Jelly Roll 10, which is my favorite one to use. I also have the Uniball Signo pen, which is more opaque, but it has bigger pen tip and the ink always doesn't flow correctly. With this jelly roll I haven't had that problem, so I usually gravitate towards that. Now that the cover page is almost done, I'm cutting some dot stores. I don't always make them in my cover page, but I felt like this spread needed some more color and the dot store was a perfect way to add that with less effort. I also included tabs to my dot stores as I really like how they look. I made them a bit bigger this time just for a change, and I think the left side of them was 9 dots long and the right side 2 dots smaller, if that makes sense. After the dot stores were ready, I added washi tapes to the tabs to give them some more color. I decided to use this warm brown for them as I'm going to add a washi tape with pattern behind the dot stores, and I felt like it would have looked a little bit too busy if I had used patterned washi tape for both. Here you can actually see the washi I'm going to add behind the dot stores as well. I really like this pinkish color and the white grid on it doesn't look too thick. By the way, you can also now see my last April weekly spread, which I actually set up in a YouTube video, which I will link in the description box. If you need to see some weekly spread ideas, definitely go check that out. On the page on the left, I decided to write a quote that I found on Pinterest. I felt like this described perfectly the idea I had when I got the inspiration for this theme, so that's why I chose it. The quote goes like this: "The power of finding beauty in the humblest things makes home happy and life lovely." I think happiness can often be found in small things that happen every day, like drinking a cup of tea or coffee before going to work or spending time with your loved ones. Even though happiness can be found in small things, it can be easy to forget as nowadays there is a lot of pressure to be very successful, which can cause you to live for the future instead of being present in the moment, if that makes sense. So this quote is just a reminder to find those small special moments in your everyday life that make you happy. I think of this as a reminder to create those small moments more too. Anyway, I decided to keep this quote page very simple and added just washi tape for the decorations. This washi tape is actually from the Notebook Therapy Vintage Rose collection, which was recently gifted to me. In this video I used just this washi tape from the set, but I'm definitely going to use the other ones as well in my weekly spreads. By the way, I also have a discount code for Notebook Therapy, which you can find in the description box. Now that the cover spread is done, we can move on to my monthly spread. I actually used a slightly different layout for this spread and you will see that soon. For the header I did this vintage border, which was inspired by one of the stamps in the Notebook Therapy Vintage Rose collection. I didn't use the stamp in this spread though, because I wanted to make the border a little bit thinner and wider, and I also still don't own a ink pad. For the calendar I used the same one-page layout as it works really well for me. The boxes are 3 dots wide and 4 dots high, by the way. I have quite small handwriting and I usually have only one thing written in each day, so I don't need a lot of writing space. Below the calendar I made a section for weekly planning where I can plan my filming schedule, for example. I tried adding this section in April and it has worked really well so far, so I wanted to use that in May too. As I have said in my previous videos, I often struggle with procrastination, which can sometimes lead to tight schedules and stress. This weekly planning space has really helped me to keep myself accountable and start doing things earlier, like filming this video. By the way, as you can probably see, my notebook is getting full, which means that I'm going to be setting up a new journal soon, and that should be my next video. I haven't set it up yet, but I will start working on it after this one, so stay tuned. I also asked a while ago if you would like to see a flip through of my old bullet journals, and many of you were interested, so I'm going to be filming a video about that very soon. I'm not sure if I will get that ready in May, but I will try to post it in the next few months. Anyway, on the page on the right, I decided to make my monthly review page, and I also added a little goals section so I can think about how I'm going to spend my time this month. I really like to do these more reflective spreads as they really help me to notice the things that went well and things I could improve for next month. I think review spreads are also great for achieving your goals, as you can reflect why you did or didn't achieve them and if the goal is even relevant for you anymore. Sometimes things you want to achieve can change, and that's totally okay. To decorate this page, I drew a little teacup with some flowers. I tried to make them look like roses, but I think they could be marigolds as well. I recently bought 2 glass teacups from IKEA, and this doodle was actually inspired by that. I like how they are see-through compared to normal cups, so you can see the color of the tea. By the way, I always like to use a timer for my tea, so it's not too bitter. Some of my friends actually laugh at me for doing this, but I think green tea especially can get easily bitter if you let it steep for too long. I would love to know if you do this as well, so I don't feel so weird, so please let me know. Tell me also your favorite tea so I can check it out. I love green tea and also spicy chai tea, but I don't have a favorite tea brand yet. Anyway, to finish off the doodle, I again added some white highlights and also some golden sparkles. Next we are making my trackers. I really liked having my trackers on separate pages last month, but I decided to use a different layout this month as I felt like it worked better with the mood tracker I chose to do. In this layout, I will have my habit tracker on top of the page and mood tracker on the bottom. I made the header a little bit bigger this time, but I don't know yet how I feel about it. Recently, I have loved doing a bit smaller lettering where I also don't put as much pressure on the downstrokes. For the habit tracker, I decided to make these small mini calendar grids because you can see better how you are doing with each habit. After I had drawn the calendars, I fixed some mistakes with my white gel pen. I always mess up at least one of these mini calendars for some reason. Anyway, then I started writing out all the habits which are the same that I tracked last month. I know I have quite a lot of habits in my tracker, and I just want to point out that I don't do all of these every day. Some calendars might end up looking empty, and that's okay. Next, I started making my mood tracker. For this one, I decided to make shelves and have different kinds of pots and cups on them where I will add a doodle that describes my mood. I love this layout, but it takes a while to set up, so that's why I sometimes go for a more simple layout like the one I had in my April setup. The best part of this layout is that you can customize it and color in the cups according to your mood instead of drawing the little doodles if that's something you prefer. I have found that I prefer spreads and trackers which I can fill with just one black pen because that just feels easier for me as I don't have to carry a lot of different pens with me. After I drew all the cups, I numbered them so I don't get confused when I'm filling this in. I actually almost forgot that I should add the mood tracker title somewhere, but luckily I had some space left on the bottom left corner. Then I wrote out the moods I like to keep track of. Instead of just happy and sad mood, I like to include productive, tired and stressed on the list as well. I found that I usually have more than just one mood during the day, and I love that you can add more than one leaf doodle in the cups if you feel like it. As I don't like to fill my mood tracker by coloring the doodles, I'm coloring them now so the spread will look a little bit more put together. I'm keeping the coloring more on the simple side and I didn't use a lot of different colors for each doodle. I used neutral colors but decided to make the teapots pink. I accidentally used the wrong Tombow shade for the first one, so I went over it with a lighter pink, but it didn't make any difference, so I ended up going over it the second time with a light beige color. For the frames I used a gold gel pen just to add some sparkle. After coloring in all the doodles, I finally added some highlights and details with white gel pen. I added the highlights on the right side on every item so it would look like the light is coming from the right side. The top part of the spread was looking a bit empty, so I decided to add washi tape near the header. Because this washi tape doesn't have straight edges, it was actually a little bit difficult to place in the journal in a way that it won't be crooked. So that's why I had to move it around a little bit. Then I took a little bit off on the left side to make the sides look more symmetrical. Next I'm setting up my monthly memory spread, which is inspired by Monday morning designs. I will leave a link to her Instagram in the description box. First I erased some pencil marks because I'm going to use a light color brush pen for the header. I actually don't remember the last time I used a Tombow dual brush pens for lettering in my bullet journal, so it was fun to write with those for a change. I went over the lower part of the lettering so it would have a nice gradient. Then I added a shadow with a black pen on the right sides of the letters to make them a bit more noticeable. I tried out this spread for the first time in April and I've been loving it so far. I write a sentence or just one word about my day, or sometimes I also drew a little doodle that describes my day. I have previously used a one-line-a-day spread, but I noticed that I usually write the same things in there and to my weekly spreads, so for now I feel like this spread is working a little bit better for me. I also decided to use 2 pages for this spread because the flip notes I did in April were a bit inconvenient and I wanted to have a bit more writing space too. To make this spread look a little bit more interesting, I used different colors and patterns for the boxes, and I really like how this spread turned out. Finally, I wrote out the dates in the boxes so this spread will be easier for me to fill in. Now it's time to make the last spread in my May bullet journal setup, which is the first weekly spread of May. As always, I will have the week number and the little mini calendar on the top left corner. I feel like seeing the monthly overview really helps with keeping track of your deadlines and seeing how much time you have for your tasks. The layout I'm using this time is a simple vertical weekly spread, which is pretty quick to set up, especially if you don't decorate the page as much. I also like to have some writing space for notes where I can write general weekly tasks that don't have a specific day when I have to complete them. Sometimes I also write the things I need to remember in the upcoming weeks. For the decorations, I drew a frame with a little home illustration inside of it. As I said in the beginning of this video, this theme isn't the most cohesive one, and by the time I'm recording this voiceover, I actually don't know yet what I'm going to call it. Having a bit more abstract theme was a fun challenge though, as I could just draw what I wanted without any limitations. Sometimes using the same color palette for the doodles is enough, and that can also make the spreads look cohesive enough. This illustration was inspired by my home, as I have a little shelf with some plants in it. I also drew a little candle, some books and a desk on the bottom with a chair. At the moment, my biggest dream is to have a work desk where I could have a little creative space. I live in a studio apartment, so I only have my kitchen table, which means that I always have to clean it up after drawing, so I have some room to eat. I have to say that I'm a little bit jealous of those who have a separate workroom or even just a work desk which is nicely organized. Hopefully I get to have that too one day. Anyway, when I was coloring the shelf and desk, I noticed that I forgot to add one point to the chair or whatever it's called, so I drew that and then continued coloring. Drawing and coloring this illustration took a bit more time, but I really like how it turned out. As the process is pretty self-explanatory, I thought I would talk a bit about my plans for this YouTube channel. As I said earlier, I'm going to film a new bullet journal setup soon and also the flip through of my old bullet journals. I would love to hear what kind of other videos you would like to see from me, or if there are any tutorials you would like to see, for example. I can also make a video about my bullet journal routine if that's something you are interested in. Most of the setup videos here on YouTube are usually more focused on the aesthetics, which is totally fine of course, but I think the functionality aspect is also important when it comes to bullet journaling. The reason why I have been bullet journaling for so long is the fact that it helps to keep my life and thoughts more organized, so I would love to share my tips with you if that's something you will find helpful. And now back to the weekly spread. I finally added some more shadows to the wooden shelf and desk, and then I moved on to coloring the notes banner. I really like drawing these banners and I think they look nice as well. To finish off this layout, I wrote the weekdays with a monoline cursive font and connected the words together. I decided to draw the daily boxes with a dashed line this time, and I drew them with a black fineliner because I felt like the spread needed a bit of contrast in the lower part too. The dashed line also looks a little bit lighter than the normal lines, and I really like that look. And it's also easier to draw the dashed lines without the ruler. Now it's time for the final flip through. I really like how this theme turned out, and I had a lot of fun creating these spreads. This neutral color palette with some pink is right up my alley, and I think the washi tape decorations were a nice touch as well. I can't wait to start using these spreads, and I hope you found some inspiration or new ideas from this video as well. Sometimes the theme you choose can be more of a color palette or a general feeling, and that also gives a bit more creative freedom. All that matters is that you are having fun with creating and you do it because you enjoy it. Remember to like this video if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a clock emoji in the comments if you watched all the way till the end. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye bye!